eyes of the basketball world are focused squarely on the Nets. Kyrie Irving is back with the team, and that means that the Nets will have their big three together in uniform for the first time this evening. They enter play having won 4 straight games, a streak that continued on Martin Luther King Day on Monday when Kevin Durant and James Harden led them to a shootout win over Milwaukee in a potential Eastern Conference Finals preview. Now they are getting ready for the first of 2 road games against Cleveland, one of the clubs that were part of the 4-team blockbuster trade that sent Harden to Brooklyn. You will not want to miss a single minute of this action. Hi, everybody, and welcome to just not another edition of the Brooklyn Nets pregame show presented by FanDuel Sportsbook with Frank Isola. I'm Nancy Newman, getting you ready for a huge night. All 3 of the Nets superstars, they are ready to go. So are we. And as the show continues, we will hear from members of our game broadcast team. All the excitement that had previously been swirling around the Nets has been kicked up a notch. Now they don't have just 2 of the NBA's best players of this era, 3. First thing, though, Frank, let's get to business. And yesterday, Kyrie Irving met with the media. He spent several minutes, very eloquent, went through a range of emotions. What was your biggest takeaway from that session?
Remember, we have not seen Kyrie Irving now for 2 weeks, and the last time he played against the Utah Jazz, I thought it was the best game that he's played as a member of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, I have no idea how long he's going to be here. Could there be a chance that he could leave the team again? I do know this. Since he's been gone, the Nets went out and dramatically changed their roster. When you go out and get a player like James Harden, not only is that a former MVP, he plays the same position that Kyrie Irving plays. So this is going to be the dynamic now between these 3 players. It's going to be very interesting to see. And I think if I'm Steve Nash and Sean Marks, I think it's great that I have Kyrie Irving back. My question would be, do they know for sure if he's going to be here for the long haul? And that'll remain to be seen. Yeah,
you add Kyrie to James Harden and Kevin Durant. What an accomplished trio between them. They have 24 All-Star selections, 18 All-NBA selections, 7 scoring titles, 3 NBA championships, and a pair of league MVP awards. And you touched on it, Frank. Okay, it's game 1. There's plenty of time, but what are you expecting this to look like?
It really is amazing. It feels like opening night all over again. It's almost as if December 22nd was the soft opening. Now the big stars are out. No matter what happens tonight, win or lose, you can't, rush to conclusions and say, well, it's going to be great or it's not going to work out. Great players will find a way to make it work. And I think if you look at what LeBron James did, obviously in Miami, look at what Kevin Durant did when he was with the Golden State Warriors. Great players figure out a way to do it, and I think these 3 can do the same.
I just can't wait for the process. For all the very latest, we want to bring in our Michael Grady now. And Michael, prior to yesterday, we had not seen Kyrie since the Nets' January 5th game versus the Jazz. He practiced, spoke with the media, as we just touched on. He did not go much into detail about the personal reasons that did keep him out, but he did say he is happy to be back.
Well, there's a lot of folks happy to see Kyrie Irving back, and there's a lot of excitement about Kyrie Irving returning and what this group is going to look like. There's been a lot of debates about whether or not this trio can fit well together, but what does the coach think? That's something I asked Coach Steve Nash a little bit earlier. What is he most curious about with this group? And he said their ability to make each other better, and we all know that that comes with sacrifice. He also said that attitude and approach is just as important as the outcome of this game. He wants to see an enthusiasm and an excitement on the floor, given the possibilities and what they can achieve together. Now, Kyrie Irving, again, missing the last 7 games, back in the lineup for the Brooklyn Nets. As we take a look at this timeline, the first game that he missed, of course, was back on January 7th, missing it for personal reasons. 5 days later, a video surfaced of a family birthday party that Kyrie Irving was a part of without a mask. 3 days after that, he was fined $50,000 by the NBA for violating health and safety protocols. He was cleared the next day, but he remained out the next couple of games as they ramped him up and got him right as far as his conditioning is concerned, which leads us to today. This Nets team, as you pointed out, Nancy, looks very different than the last time Kyrie Irving was back there on the floor. And yesterday I asked him his reaction to the big trade.
I'm very excited, just to have James here. Obviously, letting go of some of the pieces that have been here in the Nets organization for a while, even before I got here. It's going to be hard regardless. It's just the nature of the business. We're all brothers still, so we're just moving on into the next phase of just developing as a team and just building some camaraderie and having fun.
Can you shed some light on what the last couple of weeks have been like for you and the time you needed off?
There's a lot of family and personal stuff going on. So just want to leave it at that. Happy to be back. Happy to be around these guys, address the team, address everybody that need to be addressed. Now it's time to move on.
Going back on the health and safety front.
Happy to be back. It's been great. It's been enough support for me to, feel like they have my back. And, that's all I can ask for. The support, not only me, but my family. I'm a hometown kid, so, things hit a little different when, family or personal stuff going on. And that's up to me to handle that as a man. But yeah, I just take full accountability for my absence with the guys and, just had a conversation with each one of them and we move on. Beautiful thing about that is that I started off as a fanatic and I started off as a fan. I've been invested in this organization since I was a kid, and also now that I'm in this role as a player, there is quite a difference. And, the fans out there want to apologize to them as well. My commitment has always been to bringing something special to Brooklyn. It wasn't just a championship. It was unity, it was equality, it was just bigger things than just the game itself. It took quite a while and quite a few valleys to get back home initially, So for me, I'm just taking every day, just being grateful, but for the casual or the fanatic, it's part of our culture. And, I'm back. I'm happy to be back. And we got some great pieces and we just move on. And I let my actions and my game speak for itself like I planned on doing, just needed a pause.
A lot of good stuff from Kyrie Irving yesterday. Now, a lot of talk about the big three. And let's be honest, for good reason. I mean, it's historic for crying out loud. But we cannot forget about the other guys on this roster. DeAndre Jordan has stepped up in a big way with increased minutes lately. Jeff Green, Joe Harris, lights out from three-point range, particularly in the last game against the Milwaukee Bucks. And Bruce Brown continues to be a menace on both ends of the floor. So, again, while we talk about the big three for good reason, we can't forget about the supporting cast. And on that same note, the Nets will be facing off former members of their supporting cast tonight. This will take some getting used to, seeing Jared Allen in a different uniform now with the Cleveland Cavaliers along with Taurean Prince. And, for me personally, Jared Allen's rookie season in Brooklyn was my first season covering the Nets here on Yes Network. And I've seen him grow quite a bit, not just his afro, but his game, his personality, the things that he's done in the community has grown an awful lot. So I know for a lot of Nets fans, this will be quite the adjustment. Steve Nash talked glowingly about Jared Allen a little bit earlier. And recently, Jared Allen gave his reaction to the move.
It was tough. Got drafted by Brooklyn. My first 3.5 years were Brooklyn. I've been through a lot with them growing, all the support that I gave to the Brooklyn community. It was definitely rough on me. Even though you say it's the business of basketball, it never makes it easier. But at the end of the day, it's the business and had to move on.
Still got a big heart for the Nets. They helped me get better. They gave me a lot of gems I could use moving forward as far as leadership routine that I've added into my regimen that I don't see taken out for the rest of my NBA career. Then obviously being around Kev, Kyrie, and even the new coach staff, Steve Nash, D'Antoni, and those guys, picking their brain and then receiving those gems that I was able to while they're at the year and a half. And it was a blessing within a blessing, and I think that set me up for the situation I'm in now, and I can only be blessed.
If I take myself out of it, I would love to stay in Brooklyn, but I understand that in an opportunity like that, you have to go get it.
A lot of love and appreciation and understanding on all sides following this big trade. So I know I speak for a lot of Nets fans who are wishing Jared Allen, Taurean Prince all the best. Look forward to watching them in a Cavaliers uniform. But, of course, the big storyline, all the excitement about the big three, the first time we can see Kyrie, KD, and James Harden on the floor together. Nancy, looking forward to it.
Yep, this is us. Big three. Thanks, Michael. We will see you throughout the game and on the postgame. We are just getting started on the pregame show. A bit later, Richard Jefferson will join us to take some questions from Frank and me. We'll also have plenty more on the big three as they prepare to take the court together. Plus, RJ and Sarah Kustok will have a preview of the action. Tonight, Kyrie Irving joins the mix after Kevin Durant and James Harden made beautiful music together over their first 2 games as Nets teammates. The pair combined to score 138 points in victories over the Magic and the Bucks. We continue here on the pregame show presented by FanDuel Sportsbook with the lineups. There you see the big 3, Harden, Durant, Irving. DeAndre Jordan and Jeff Green join them in Brooklyn's starting 5. Cleveland has Colin Sexton and rookie Isaac Okoro in the backcourt. Larry Nance Jr., Cedi Osman, Andre Drummond up front. So much of the NBA's recent history has been shaped by teams with superstar trios like the Heatles from the early 2010s and the explosive Warriors of the last half-decade. Tonight, we get our first look at the Nets group together. Here is part of our team that will call the action, Sarah Kustok and Richard Jefferson.
Nancy, thank you. Joined here by Richard Jefferson, and I know we're both really excited to finally get an opportunity to see what this Brooklyn Nets team looks like with James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving all on the floor. Richard, from your perspective, what do you anticipate in terms of the first few minutes of this game and just the opportunity to see these guys right out of the gates?
Yeah, normally when you're playing against an opponent, there's a feeling out process. But in this situation here, these guys have played together, whether it's all-star games, USA team, so they understand each other. They understand the way they play. What I really expect is a little bit of overpassing. Everyone just trying to kind of ease into it. But ultimately, I really feel that James Harden is going to be the leading assist man. That's just kind of who he is. I think Kevin Durant. I think Kyrie Irving is the one guy that everyone's excited, but I think if you understand Kyrie's basketball IQ, Kyrie understands how to play. He understands how to get his. He understands how to move and play within an offense. He's played with LeBron James and Kevin Love. He's played with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. He's played with guys that are all-stars, that are MVP caliber players before, so I think this is just a very easy transition.
Yeah, and when you look at these players and also look at the compilation of this roster, and we saw it some in the last 2 games with James Harden and Kevin Durant and how many open looks other teammates had, Joe Harris in particular, but we saw some from Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, the list goes on. What type of matchup problems now does it present to teams when you have 3 prolific scorers with the likes of these guys?
Well, this is the issue, and we talked about this, really, for the last week or so since the trade, is that James Harden is an individual that commands the attention of 5 players, right? Everybody has to know where James Harden is when he was with the Rockets. You have to know he's MVP, leading scorer the last 3 years. Kevin Durant, another guy. It takes 1.5, if not 2 people to guard him, and that's always keeping your eyes. What you can look for is the spacing, the tremendous amount of spacing. You look at the Houston Rockets loss to the Lakers last year. They double-teamed James Harden pretty much on every pick and roll, forced him to pass it to Russell Westbrook and to other players and allowed them to beat you. Well, you can't do that here. You can't double KD. You can't double James Harden. You can't double Kyrie because now you're going to leave 2 of the best scorers in the NBA playing one-on-one or, really playing through gaps, and that's just next to impossible to guard.
Yeah, pick your poison is going to be the scenario, and forcing opponents' defenses to make a lot of very, very challenging choices on the floor. The leeway of things, or the runway, I should say. I know Steve Nash talked before the game just in general about the big picture of things and trying to allow this to all come together in a manner where they're going to be patient with it. What do you anticipate just in terms of the timing that this may bring? We know James Harden's still working himself back into shape. Kyrie Irving has had the last couple days to ramp up, but he too coming back after missing the last 7 games. How do you fit that together and put in perspective what it may look like just in terms of the time that these guys will use to come together?
Well, I think you look at, okay, what do they need in order to be in that class? They have the talent. They have, the most talent, in my opinion, in the league currently. So when you look at the talent, it's how do they meld it together? Where a lot of it's the X factors. It's guys like Joe Harris. It's guys like DeAndre Jordan. These are the guys that are literally the glue pieces, right? They have to make sure that they are contributing. DeAndre Jordan, with the trade of Jared Allen, there's not that much size, so he's got to be an individual that is really the helm of their defense, protecting the rim. Joe Harris is the guy that's really probably going to benefit the most, because when you're scrambling, trying to guard so many different players, like Joe Harris, one of the best three-point shooters in the league, is going to be left open. And so Joe Harris knocking down shots, I think DeAndre and even Jeff Green, his versatility when they play all small and when they go with a small five group with him at the five, I think what you have to do is you have to allow lots, and it's going to take weeks, if not months, for each unit to really familiarize themselves with all of the things that they are doing together.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Richard, I hope that Bird and Grady are ready for the both of us here tonight on the broadcast. Nancy, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
Thanks, guys. I know we are. We could not let Sarah have all the conversation time with Richard after another break on the Brooklyn Nets pregame show presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Frank and I have more with RJ on Brooklyn's Big Three.
Dear Jack Frost, people say...
For more information.
Rob Perez, Worldwide Wad, back here for FanDuel Sportsbook to bring you all the odds and opportunities for tonight's game. Coming off the big primetime win against the Bucks, the Eastern Conference odds-on favorites travel to Cleveland as 10-point favorites. Sheesh. And if there is one thing that has remained consistent in Brooklyn this year, it's points being scored, with the over-under set at 225.5. How will it all work? We get the first answer tonight in Cleveland.
Tonight's odds segment brings us back here on the Brooklyn Nets pregame show presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. As promised before the break, it is our turn to chat with Richard Jefferson. And Richard, okay, following James Harden's spectacular Nets debut, your message to Nets fans was congratulations. What's your message tonight for the viewing faithful with Kyrie back in?
Well, I want to say patience. When you look at some of the other powerhouses around the league, the Lakers have kind of been together, now their core unit. When you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, who they were fortunate enough to beat in the last game, they have a lot of continuity that they're going to have to work through. But when they do, so there's going to be some highs, there's going to be some lows, they're going to have some losses against teams that they should beat because they're still figuring it out. But ultimately, I think at the end of the season, this team is going to be one of the favorites.
You know, Richard, Kyrie's playing back in Cleveland only the second time since you guys won that championship. So when he looks up, he's going to see the banner. He was part of a team with yourself, LeBron James, obviously Kevin Love. You had said he understands how to get his. How much more complicated will it be playing with a guy like James Harden, who has the ball in his hands so much?
Well, look, that was kind of the primary, job for Kyrie in Cleveland, was just a scorer. He was more of a two-guard. LeBron James was more of a ball handler and facilitator. So it's understanding sacrifice. The reason why we were able to win a championship is because of the sacrifice of Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and even LeBron James at times. So when I look at this Nets current roster, if James Harden is the primary assist guy and he's led the league in assists, that's what he does. And Kyrie is the assassin roaming around, scoring, dominating defenses the way he always does. And then, as Kevin Durant is doing Kevin Durant, I think that's a formula for success. So if you want to win championships, everyone has to sacrifice, but it's always sacrificing just a role, not your entire game.
Now, we know that these guys are going to score. What's your biggest concern with this group right now? Is it chemistry? Is it rebounding? Is it defense? What would be your biggest concern?
Concern is kind of a red flag word. I wouldn't say concern. I think an area that they're going to need to focus on is defensively. You don't have to be a top 10 defense when you have this type of firepower if the firepower is moving in the same direction. All they need to be is somewhere between 10 and 15. If they're the 13th ranked defense and they're a top 5 offense, then I think they're okay. They got to get away from the 18s, the 22s. When your defense is ranked in there, it doesn't matter the type of firepower that you have. Your defense is going to fail you.
Excellent. Can't wait, Richard. Looking forward to seeing you on the postgame, too, to see what you have to say after the fact. For a year plus, DeAndre Jordan was a mentor to Jared Allen in Brooklyn. Now they'll be on opposite sides when Allen and the Cavaliers face Jordan, KD, and the Nets. Harden, KD, and the Nets.